I always enjoy our conversations with Dave Elner, the commissioner of the GCAA. Dave, how you doing?
Hey, it's not Monday. That's one thing.
That's right. But
Yeah.
but is it any different than a Monday?
So far, yes. Yesterday
Okay.
was one of those days, so we'll see. But nah, life's good, man. Can't complain.
We're recording this on a Tuesday. You got all of Tuesday left, so who knows? It could become a Monday before Tuesday's done. But we are delighted to have you with us. And, we're going to talk about a variety of sports, but we might as well, since we're in halftime of a football game, talk about football. There's a new conference in town, the GCAA. Well, not the conference new, but the fact that there is kind of a football conference with Andrew College and Central Georgia Tech involved. And of course, this game today is Central Georgia Tech and Georgia Military. I like it. Is there more GCAA football coming?
I don't know. We've got any more coming right yet. The only one that possibly could come in, Gordon could move their team from club status up, but no word that they're doing that at this point in time. We haven't had football outside of Georgia Military since the early 2000s, and that's when Middle Georgia had a team, and they had a team for a couple of years, and then did away with their football program. So it's been just Georgia Military as our lone football program, and they've run as an independent. Now they're still, all our schools are still listed as independents. I guess we really probably need to look at that from a national perspective and say if Central Georgia Tech and Andrew do stick around, then we've got the GCAA football conference. So we'll see how everything does. It's Central Georgia Tech and Andrew are stepping up. Andrew, brand new. Central Georgia Tech moving from club status. So it's going to be interesting. Both of those new teams got their first victories last week.
So all of the Georgia teams win last week. GMC wins, Central Georgia Tech wins, Andrew College wins. That's a win-win for the GCAA, I would think. I mean, there is some additional publicity involved, too, when you've got more football programs.
Well, it's not only that, the schools, it helps their enrollment. You're adding probably 100-plus kids onto your campus. So there's that enrollment kicker right there. And, I think we'll see how Central Georgia Tech and Andrew are getting their feet wet right now. I think for them, their schedules are pretty much loaded with prep schools, and they're trying to get it going, get it moving in the right direction, get everything clicking on all cylinders, so to speak. Georgia Military, hey, this is nothing new for them. This, you cover them every week, which we're so appreciative of. I mean, you just came back from Tyler, Texas when they put together a 35-10 victory right there.
As a matter of fact, behind at halftime, and then they poured it on in the second half. Some great football from GMC a week ago, and obviously we are hoping for the same this week. All right, you said if they do stick around, in referencing Central Georgia Tech and Andrew College, does that mean this is kind of an experimental probationary period?
I wouldn't say that's an experimental probationary period, but we all know football is very expensive to run. It's not cheap, and that's one reason why Middle Georgia did away with it. They were still paying for football several years later. Now the operations of it have sort of changed a little bit. A lot of schools are really requiring a lot more out of the students as far as financially to cover. So we'll see how it does, but we're excited to have them at this point.
If it does become a conference that declares a champion, what is the process that would be different then as compared to now?
They're playing each other once. I really would like to see them play each other twice. I don't know that that'll happen. We'll see at that point. I'm serving this year on the football committee. So you know as well as I do over the years with all of our sports, who you play matters. And if you're playing NJCAA schools, whether it be Division I or Division III, they're going to look at that a little more favorable than if you're playing a prep school. So, I got a feeling next year, both Andrew and Central Georgia Tech will probably have a little stronger schedule.
Can you give us a little insight into how this came to be? Because it really kind of seemingly, from at least an outside observer's perspective, kind of snuck up on us. We didn't know it was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, there are 2 more football programs.
Well, we've been talking about it, but, a lot of times until it's a done deal, until the ink's dried, so to speak, on schools really pulling the trigger and backing and supporting, you just don't want to say, hey, we're going to have football, and then you don't have football. So we pretty much waited till that was a definitive, and I think our schools see the importance of playing in JCAA as opposed to just club.
All right, let's talk about the conference. One school out, that is ABAC. They have now become an NAIA school. So we have seen over the course of the last decade or so, and we've talked about this before, kind of a downsizing in the conference. What do you see in the next couple of years from an overall conference perspective?
Well, ABAC was one of our long-standing members. They've been around 30-plus years. And there's always a dynamic change, Robert. We saw back in the 80s where Georgia and Alabama were together as one conference. Georgia grew, Alabama grew. So those two were split nationally. 5-6 years ago, we were up to 20, maybe it's a little longer than that, 8 years ago. We were up to 22 schools. And then we had mergers. Some schools dropped programs financially. From the athletic standpoint, just drop the programs. So the one thing that we can't do, we can't create schools. So, and then we're also, we have we have 4 members that are of the TCSG, the Technical College System of Georgia. Then the other ones are from the USG, the university system. And then we have a couple of privates. So, we can't go out and create schools. The technical school, their mission is really workforce readiness. Most of them do not have facilities for athletics. As being covering South Georgia Tech in basketball, they created an old plane hangar into a really nice basketball facility. And so most of them don't have those facilities, and those type of things come into play when you're looking at starting athletics. And so if you don't have facilities, that makes it that much harder to have programs. You're dependent upon other people besides yourself. If you do things like that, you better have a contract in place, because that other outside entity could yank the carpet right out underneath your feet at the very last moment. And so there's a lot. You want to be in control of your athletic program, not someone else. And so that's where I see – I don't see our technical schools. A lot of them are not just, and there's nothing wrong with that. They just don't see it as part of their mission. And some that have, and they wanted to do it, but they really didn't jump into the deep water with it. So that's where we lost some of those. Of course, we lost some of our USG schools through consolidation. The financial aspect. If collegiate, in academia, if schools' budgets are being cut, then they're looking at everywhere to cut those. And athletics is not exempt from that. So we look at that, we just say, okay, cuts are coming from the state. And so we sit there and say, okay, can we make it through this? And you get to a point where it says, okay, we're working on bare bones right now. And would I love for us to have unlimited schools and unlimited budgets? Yes. But you also got to look at the financial aspect of that. And we have some schools that are sharing services. And so, I don't know where we're going. And then a lot of it is dependent upon the university system of Georgia. They can make a decision, which, there's nothing that from our end that we can do. And we just got to go along and adapt to that.
You mentioned the fact that Georgia and Alabama in the 80s were a combined region, and that's not totally uncommon. Currently, you've got a Region 23 with Louisiana and Mississippi. Mm-hmm. Do you see maybe a Georgia and South Carolina, because South Carolina is kind of a small region as well. I mean, is that something that could happen in the future?
Well, South Carolina is part of Region 10, which is South Carolina, North Carolina, and the Virginias. We've had discussions, and then it talked about it one time. We had a Zoom meeting, and what they pay for their region dues and what our schools pay are completely different. And they were not didn't want to look at that aspect of that. So you can't force regions to do that. But then again, if a region gets to low numbers, then national office might have to look at pairing us back up with somebody. Is South Carolina better fit? Is going back to Alabama fit? At this point, we're fine with 11 schools. I think if we were to get down to 6, I think something like that would probably happen.
Let's talk about championships quickly. And I know the ones that we're involved in: basketball, softball, baseball. Basketball, it always happens at the highest remaining seed after the quarterfinals. The softball is going back to Solid Rock. I learned, and I'm assuming it is now common knowledge, where baseball is going. Is that correct?
Yes, baseball's ABAC, even though they've left, they put in a bid to host the tournament, and the coaches voted to have it there. So we'll be having baseball at ABAC, softball back at Strong Rock outside of McDonough there. And we've been at Strong Rock for a number of years. Last year, both baseball and softball were at Georgia Highlands at their new facility.
Isn't softball following a little different format, though? More teams involved this year?
Everybody's going. They're going to have an opening day there where that way the teams that play, they can here's the thing. You can go into opening day and get beat day one, and you've paid basically your hotel and never used it. You wasted that money. So we're trying to set it up where they're there and at least that is being utilized.
Is there a change in the format for baseball?
No.
All right, so it will remain the same. Lastly, in our last few moments, maybe it is way too early to even tie larger crowds with anything going on nationally, but I've noticed Georgia Military College, the first 2 football games, big crowds. Tyler, last Saturday, big crowd. I knew some JUCO volleyball. They have had much larger crowds to the start of this year. Is there something going on where at the D1 level, you now got professional athletes basically playing football because a lot of them are making some money off what they do? Is it way too early to tie any correlation between these larger crowds and maybe fans wanting that more organic passion for the game player?
Been doing this for 25 years, and I can't really say that one is necessarily tied to the other. I mean, you sit there and look, wife just retired from UGA, and this is her last year's season tickets. And I just noticed where season ticket prices were going up for everybody else. Do these big colleges price themselves out at some point? No, because the people are tied into that diehards. They're gonna come up with the money somehow. Is it something that people just say, "Hey, I want to see the lower level collegiate athletics"? They feel like it might be a little more pure. That's possible. Are the communities maybe trying to pull their community in a little bit more? That's possible. But I can't see any correlation one way or the other.
Dave Elner, always good talking with you. We will chat again soon, I am sure. And thank you for being our guest at halftime.
Thanks, Robert. And go Dogs. Go Central Georgia Tech. I got to say them both this year. Go Andrew.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, buddy. We'll see you next time.